I'm Aaron Bartuska, and welcome to Make More Movies, a split-tooth podcast where I ask DIY filmmakers what keeps them creating. Today, we'll be talking to Michael Glover Smith, a Chicago filmmaker, writer, and professor who truly needs no introduction here on Split-Tooth Media. In 2026, he has already released a book on the films of Bob Dylan entitled Bob Dylan as Filmmaker, No Time to Think, and a new feature film called Hekla, which follows a young woman over the course of one day pursuing an acting career. Michael took the time to sit down with me and chat about the importance of collaborating with the same people throughout your career, pushing your stylistic limits as a director, and taking chances in the editing room. Give it a listen. You've been making stuff since, I guess, officially since 2015, right?
Yeah, my first feature, Cool Apocalypse, came out in 2015. I shot it in the summer of 2014, and that's where I really like to consider my career beginning.
Gotcha. Off the record, I'll cut this out. Can I ask you about the minx?
Well, you don't have to cut it out, but I will say I'm fucking mortified that you watched that.
I wouldn't be mortified at all, man. What that movie felt like was like, okay, I just finished film school. I have all these resources, and I'm gonna make the script I've always wanted to make, which is like super high genre, silly, schlocky fun. Yep. And then I think it accomplishes that. So,
well, bless your heart for saying that.
But I'm one of like 8 people to have watched it, apparently.
You know, I was in New York City last summer, and my buddy Adrian Anderson, he made a really great film called Pomp and Circumstance. It's great. It's an incredible first feature. Him and Patrick Gray shot it on 16 millimeter. Anyway, Adrian told me that he watched The Minx, and I'm like, why are people finding this? Why are they watching it?
It's on like Daily Motion or something.
It's on Daily Motion. I have no clue who the fuck uploaded it. But I will tell you the funny thing about it, you're right. That was like fresh out of film school. I graduated in 2004, got my MA in film production, and then the next year I shot it in 2005. But when I was in film school, I only ever shot on 16 millimeter. And then I moved from California back to Chicago, where I was living before, and everybody was shooting on digital. And that
was around when that happened.
Yes, and I had literally never shot anything on digital, so I had no clue. I had no understanding of the technology. And then something else terrible happened, which is that I hired a gaffer. Well, we made this movie for no money, and I hired a gaffer, and he had his own gear, and he said he would, work for free. And then, like 2 days before we were supposed to start shooting, he said, I got hired for a gig where they're going to pay me, so I can't do it. I'm sorry. And then I had this ethical dilemma. It's like, okay, we've already cast it. We've already crewed it up. Do we just do it without lights?
I love doing it without lights, man. That's the way to go, honestly.
And that's what I said. I was like, I'm 29 years old. This is like my French New Wave movie, and it'll have a punk rock attitude, and people will understand.
Honestly, screw that guy though for saying like, "Oh, I'll do it pro bono," and then turning around and being like,
"I know."
Oh, you know what? Never mind.
I know, unbelievable. It's like either you're all in or you're not.
Right. Well, that's it. So you made The Minx when you were my age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
So you're way ahead of me, man. You're way ahead of me.
Well, no, but if I can have half the career that you've had since then. I would be pretty happy with that because I think the thing I liked the most about watching all of your films, and we can touch on all of them a little bit, but just like all of your films are about multiple people just like having conversations and really like I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but they're not really plot driven. The plot is in these characters and these conversations and the slice of life that you kind of find them in, and really the driving force of your career because I you know, I watched them all in over the course of like 3 days, is these actors who carry over into each film. Every one of your films
grows out of the last one.
At least one actor that came from the last one.
Yeah.
So I mean, props to you for apparently being like the best director to work with ever. But like, what is any of that like intentional? What is that? Why do your interests lie there?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that my work is not plot driven; it's character driven, and that's just the only way I know how to write. You know, it's the only way that makes sense to me. I actually wrote a lot of scripts before I made Cool Apocalypse, and a lot of them were more genre oriented and were more ambitious and more plot driven. And then I just realized I never wanted to make any of those. The process, the budgets always seemed like they were going to be way higher than what I could do. And then with Cool Apocalypse, I just thought, man, I'm probably only going to be able to raise a few $1,000s if I want to make a feature. And what kind of movie could I make for that little money? That was sort of the question. And then the script grew out of that. I was like, well, if I made a movie that was shot almost entirely in my own apartment, what could that be like? And then that's when I hit on the idea of making a film about two couples, one, you know, a man and a woman going on a first date, and then a man and a woman who've been in a on-again, off-again relationship, kind of breaking up for the final time. And I thought, just juxtaposing that would be interesting, you know, to just kind of cut back and forth, because then the audience is going to think about what the similarities and differences are, and that was kind of the whole idea. And so after that, you know, some of those actors I loved working with, and I wanted to work with them again. And sometimes even the idea of bringing back a character was appealing to me.
Right, which we will get back into, because that's one of my favorite things about your newest film. And it is also like, yeah, the actors carry over from film to film, but it's also like, you know, you went from a film about two couples at odds to a film about three couples in the same place at odds, to then three couples in different places, to then a family, right? So you got like this staircase effect in your career where you're just gradually adding people. And it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost like you're like, okay, I've done 4 people in a room. Now I can do 6 people in a room. Now I can do 6 people in different time periods and places and parts of their relationship, which, you know, Mercury and Retrograde they're all in different parts of their relationship. So is Rendezvous in Chicago. And then Relative, I'm just watching that and I'm like, how the fuck did he direct this with all these different people and age group? But it's like you were training yourself to get to that point.
Well, that's the great thing about filmmaking. It's like anything in life, you know, you want to challenge yourself and you want to expand on what you did before. Otherwise, what's the point? And you're right, with Relative, I was really interested in I wanted to film a party. That was part of the appeal. I was like, I want a party scene. And, you know, there's one scene in Relative where there are 10 people on screen at the same time and they all have dialogue. And that was so fun to block. You know, as a director, like, I've never had so many people on screen. It's the scene where the dad toasts Benji, the champagne toast. There are 10 people, they all talk, and just figuring out how to create a master shot and then how to break it up into separate shots, was a lot of fun. And then Hekla, to me, was also a challenge, because that's the first film I've ever made where you have a protagonist who's in every scene.
Right. It was totally because if you're looking at the rest of your career as like this stepping stone sort of, you know, trajectory, that Hekla, it just is you playing against type, really. Like you decide to, which I think is genius, focus on one character from a past film, and it's just them throughout the day. It's no longer all these people in different points of the day or in different points of their lives. It's one character going through one day. You only meet the people that she meets. Yeah. And what made you want to like focus in on that?
Well, I thought it would be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say fun,
I mean,
it's like,
why are we doing this if it
yeah,
isn't fun, right?
I thought it would be cool to have a character who's just interacting kind of with a different person or a different group of people in every scene. The only person that sort of comes back is her ex-girlfriend Tyler, and that's only because those are flashbacks and she's thinking about her and she's
Right.
remembering. So it's like the past is kind of intruding on the present. It's like these memories that she's trying to suppress are kind of bubbling up during each audition.
Right, yeah. For the people listening who don't know, you made a film in 2022 called Relative that was about a family reunion around a graduation of the youngest brother. Hekla is a character played by Elizabeth Stamm, who meets Benji, the youngest son, who was bringing this reunion together, and they went to college together, right? Or they were in a class together, and they kind of reconnect. She goes to the family reunion, and really she's just like one of the most intoxicating characters in the movie, where you watch her and you're like, oh, I love that this movie is an ensemble, but like give me 40 to 60 more minutes of her, right?
Yeah.
And you did that. Now, was that your idea? Was that Elizabeth reaching back out to you, being like, "Hey, I want to make something"? You co-wrote it with her.
Yeah.
Like how did that come about?
It was my idea, and I was just really glad that she was excited to do it. Because we had a great time working together, and I actually wrote that part for her originally. I met her at a film festival in Florence, Alabama in 2019, the George Lindsey Film Festival, which is where we're going to have the world premiere of this film.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Look
very
at that.
fitting. It's destiny, you know what I mean?
It's serendipity.
It is serendipity. So she was there with a feature called Bleed American that she had a supporting role in, and I was there with Rendezvous in Chicago. And so I saw her in Bleed American, and I told her afterwards that I really enjoyed her performance. And then, they had filmed that movie in Indiana, and I was kind of amazed that she told me she lived in Chicago because I had no clue. I mean, she could have been from anywhere, and I was like, I live in Chicago too. We should work together. So at that point, I already had the idea for Relative. I may have already written some of it, and I knew that it was going to be about a guy who kind of skips out on his own graduation party because he doesn't care, and he would rather just be on a date with the girl he met the night before.
Great concept.
Yeah, right? Because,
Yeah.
Graduation ceremonies are boring. And
Right.
it's like he lives with his parents, and so he doesn't need to see them. He doesn't really care that his siblings are coming in from out of town, his older sister, which I think is very realistic,
Well, he's the youngest by 10 years too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, there were a couple moments throughout watching all of your films where I was like, Michael Glover Smith knows me. He's shoplifted my life. He's put it into a movie, specifically with these two most recent movies, because I'm the youngest by 10 years in my family, and also just like watching Hekla and being like, the artistic process sucks. And like, you're working, but you're not working. Are you working or are you looking for work? Like, these are all things that my late 20s have met me with.
Well, guess what? It never ends.
Thank you for telling me that.
You're going to be in your late 40s, and you're just like, am I working or am,
Great.
So anyway, when I met her, that's when I realized, because she's hilarious in real life. She's so funny. I realized, the character of the girl he goes on the date with needs to be this person. So I wrote it for her, but then I still made her audition for it. Like, I made her submit a tape. And that was partially because Claire Cooney, who plays Yvonne, the younger sister, was the casting director. And she's a really excellent casting director. And so she wanted to see Liz audition. She actually wanted to see Wendy Roby audition. In spite of the fact that Wendy Roby's in, Twin Peaks. So Liz, of course, knocked the audition out of the park. I made her do the Oscar Wilde monologue for her audition. And then here's the funny thing about Hekla. I had written a version of that before Relative, and it wasn't about Hekla, it was about another character.
Okay.
And so this was also a new experience for me, was like salvaging another script by changing the lead character.
Mm-hmm.
And retrofitting it to make it about someone else. Because I had written the script. It was originally called The Diamond Sea, and it was about an actress named Michaela. And I wanted Claire Cooney to play that part because Claire was the casting director on Mercury and Retrograde, and that was the first time I had ever had a real audition process where we went to a casting agency, in downtown Chicago. We videotaped all the auditions. It was me, the two producers, the casting director with a video camera, and we just saw actors one after another, like cattle call style. And I was just fascinated by that process. I thought, man, actors have hard lives. It is tough to do this over and over and over again because actors are constantly being judged. They're constantly being rejected, and yet they have to believe that, that they can do it. And so, and even after they become successful, that's the crazy thing. They still have to do it.
It's so interesting too that, the only time in the entire movie where Hekla feels like she is at ease, I thought, up until the final audition, which feels like her most she has a sort of release during that. But I thought the intermission with the photographer was such a nice moment because it's the first time in the movie where someone isn't expecting her to do something like that impresses them. Right. It's just a guy being like, I know how to make you look good. Let's just do this. Like, I'm going to make you smile. I'm going to make you actually laugh for the first time. It's like in that day of 4 auditions and a play and breaking up with her girlfriend, like she needed that break, even if it was just 5 minutes.
You got it. Got it. That's why it's the intermission.
It's so good. It's just
like a little pause in the middle of the film,
right.
Yeah,
it was only 2 minutes. I was like, I think I mentally needed 5 or 6 minutes of this. Come on, Michael.
I'm so happy to hear you say that because you got it. So anyway, the script writing process began in 2016. And also, after we were done shooting Mercury, Claire Cooney was in a Shakespeare production in a bar. And I saw it. It wasn't Macbeth, but it was Love's Labour's Lost. And I thought, this could be the climax. I could make a movie about the busiest day in an actress's life, and then the climax will be her performing in a Shakespeare play. And then that'll be the end. So I kind of knew that was the overarching structure. And then I would just ask all my actor friends questions like, what's the most number of auditions you've ever done in one day? What's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you on an audition? And I would hear these kind of great stories, and those all kind of fed into the script. And then I sort of put it away for a while, and I did other things, and I did Relative. And then while Liz and I were promoting Relative, we became a lot closer, because, we were traveling around. I mean, she was at the premiere, which was in not Tallahassee, it was in Tampa, Florida. We went to Iowa together. We went to Michigan, did a ton of screenings in Chicago and tons of Q&As. And so, we got to know each other really well. And we would also make these, TikTok videos. I don't have TikTok, but we created a TikTok account for Relative. My executive producer was like, he goes, my friends out in Silicon Valley are saying TikTok is the best social space for this film. So anyway, I came up with this idea that it would be like Benji and Hekla from Relative would be sending each other videos, because the whole idea is Benji lives in New Mexico, because Cameron, the actor, was living in New Mexico. And I thought, just posting these on TikTok as if they're talking to each other would be hilarious, a hilarious way to promote the film. So we started doing that, and Liz was improvising, and she was so funny, and that's what made me think, oh, let's do the Diamond Sea script, but let's change it, make it about Hekla instead, and then just let Liz go wild. That was kind of the idea. But interestingly, I know this is a long answer, but
No,
I think it's interesting. We were going to do Hekla in 2023, and someone who said they were going to finance this movie did not come through with the money. So we put it on hold for 2 years. And then I tried to make another film called Promenade, which would have had a higher budget. And then, I couldn't raise the money for that. And then I went back to Hekla. And it was only when I went back to it that I asked Liz to co-write it with me. So, if we had done it in 2023, it would have been my script only. And during that break, I realized because Liz is in every scene, the film will be better if she has complete ownership over the character. So I had a coffee meeting with her, and I said, Liz, how would you feel about rewriting it? I'm like, I said, don't feel any pressure, because she's never written a script before. She's never written fiction. And I said, don't feel like you have to do a lot. I'm like, but maybe you could just go through it and add things if you see a potential to add something. And if you want to subtract something, you can subtract it. If you want to change it, just do whatever the hell you want. And if you want to change the dialogue with the other characters, do that too. And so she did that. She actually printed out the script and took a pen and wrote all of her changes in the margins. And then she literally photographed each page that she changed with her phone and then texted me the photos. And then I went into the master document and then I made the edits. That was kind of wild, but, her contributions, improved it dramatically. So that was really the smartest thing I did, I think, was inviting her to collaborate that way.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and you up until Relative were the sole writer director on all your projects, and then that sort of shifted with Paper Planes, right? Which was Alyssa Thordarson. Is that how you say? Thordarson. Do you think that opened up the doors for you to be more open to that sort of collaboration?
It definitely did. Because that was the first time I'd ever directed anything that I did not write myself, because it was her script and she was looking for someone to help her make it because she had never directed. And so my original thought was, why don't I produce this and you direct it, Alyssa? And she said, I don't know enough about directing. I don't know enough about the technical side. So then I said, well, it's quite simple, actually. I said, why don't I show you, I said, I'll hire the cinematographer, the editor, the composer. I'll show you how I work with these people, and then you cast it because you're the actress. And so that's how the duties kind of broke down on Paper Planes. And then I loved the process of collaborating with her so much that I thought, man, I need to do this more and go further. So, the whole experience of making Hekla for me was an exercise in ceding control to my collaborators, because I, throughout the film, I would allow people to do what they wanted. And, and I think when you hire the right people and you trust them, then they're always going to surprise you in a good way.
Right. I love that. I love that mentality. Do you find that a lot of the way you work is this sort of, how do I describe it? It's like, your co-writers and your co-directors are your actresses, and your casting director becomes your actress. Do you find people are wearing many hats on your film sets?
Oh yeah, totally. Because these are all micro budget films. So, everybody wears a lot of hats. I mean, my producer, Aaron Wertheimer, he's also the one who's, in charge of the catering,
Right.
So it's like everybody, just pitches in wherever they can. I'll tell you something else crazy about Hekla. The Macbeth, play in the bar, Liz cast all those roles as well. And again, I just told her, I was like, Liz, why don't you just cast whoever you want? Cast your
Mm-hmm.
friends, and then, rehearse it on your own. I don't want to be there. I want, like, surprise me with what you
Mm-hmm.
do. And then I want to show up with the crew and have it be like a documentary where we're shooting
Yeah.
in a dive bar and it's all handheld,
Well, it's such a smart decision because you instantly make her more comfortable. The scene feels spontaneous in that like really alive way. And yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic foresight on your part to do that. Is that something you feel like you would have done around Cool Apocalypse or Mercury and Retrograde? Like, how do you think have you let go of certain directorial habits or like broadened your horizons a little bit since then?
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
I've gotten more confidence, as time has gone by. When I made my first two features, I was, very insecure. I was a nervous wreck when I made both of my first two features, but I pretended like I wasn't. Cool Apocalypse, I was having fun, but I was also deeply insecure. And then Mercury was a nightmare because the budget was high for me. It was very
Mm-hmm.
high, and I was working with, people who had done this many times before. I mean, that's kind of the irony of being a first-time director or a second-time director. Most of the people you're working with are probably have way more experience than you are, And so, like I was working with, Roxanne Mosquito, that great French actress. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she's huge. She's been in films that have played the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
And so, and the DP on that film was very experienced, Jason Chu. So, I think I was trying to bluff like I always knew what I was doing, and I didn't really feel that way inside. And so for me, really, Rendezvous was kind of the turning point where
Mm-hmm.
I started to have more fun and I started to relax more and I just wasn't as worried. And then Relative is the one where it really all came together, where I just had fun the entire time. I was very relaxed and I was making sure everybody who worked on it also had fun.
Right.
Especially the actors who played the parents, Wendy Roby and Frances Guinan, those people are so experienced in film, television, theater. They've been doing it their whole lives. And, I really wanted to make it a positive experience for them, and make them feel like they were, exercising their creative muscles. And I did, they told me that they loved doing it. Um, so for me, Relative was really a big turning point in my career. And then we carried that on into the shorts and into Hekla.
Yeah.
But I think, this thing that I'm saying about ceding control, you can only do it after you've been doing it for a while. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like when I was saying I was bluffing earlier about feeling confident, it's like now I have the confidence that I only pretended like I had back then. And I'll give you one more example from Hekla. And this is, the first time I've really been interviewed about this film. So this is like a big revelation, but all of the color fantasy sequences, I was not present when those were shot.
Really?
Yes. I
Okay. Who was there for those other than Elizabeth?
I hired a second unit director, a guy named Charles
Okay.
Borg. He wanted to shoot. He's a good filmmaker who lives here in Chicago. He's a friend of mine who teaches film production at Columbia College. And he
Mm-hmm.
had volunteered to help me out because if you need second unit stuff, I could shoot your exteriors because he had read the script and he was
Mm-hmm.
going to like shoot all the shots of Hekla running into the buildings. And I thought, because that was sort of one day in the script was just all the outside stuff of her running around.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, if you're going to work on this and shoot stuff, you should do something else that's going to be more fun. And then I thought, oh, why don't we do these fantasy scenes and have you and Liz just go out and cook stuff up. Those weren't in the script. They were not written in the script.
Wow.
I said, and then Charles brought on his buddy, Joe, who shot those scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the two of them are credited as second unit directors. But the ideas, the concept for each one of those things began with Liz. I said, Liz, tell them what you want to do, and they'll figure out how to shoot it. And so she told them what she wanted to do. And then we also gave them our production designer, Heather Kuhlman, who I think is a genius, and then also our makeup artist, Heather Vogt.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, I mean that ending sequence, that ending monologue where it's cutting back and forth.
Yeah.
Between her performing it in the theater to her out in the woods, and there's all these like crazy costumes and angles. It was jaw-dropping for a couple of reasons, because it was, I mean, again, maybe it's just because I had watched all your films in such close proximity, and I love this type of filmmaking, but, you know, I have to evoke another indie Chicago filmmaker, my apologies, but like with like someone like Joe Swanberg, like he makes, I love his movies, but he makes the same movie over and over again, and you're just kind of like, this is what I'm getting, right?
Yeah.
And I was kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, is that what Michael Glover Smith is going to be? And then you see these sequences, and you see the willingness to let your actress just like be such a huge part of this, and you're like, no, he really is trying to grow and expand with every project, to the point of now even stylistically. Like, I think that is the thing that really floored me the most about Hekla. Is my favorite film you've made, and I think that's what floored me about it, was just like the stylistic boundaries you pushed, even for yourself. Like,
yeah, that was the whole point of it, was to do something that would be more, you know, stylistically ambitious. And I mean, I knew very early on that I wanted it to be in black and white, in color. And my original thought was, okay, for every audition and for the performance in the play, someone is going to be filming her, and we're going to cut to that subjective camera, and that's going to be in color. But everything else is going to be in black and white. And so that when we shot those scenes, you know, we had two cameras going at once, and that's something I've never done before. You know, we had two Blackmagic cameras going at once. You know, the A cam and the B cam, basically, and the B cam was the color footage.
Gotcha.
And then it was like much later when I sent Liz off to go shoot with Charles. That's when I thought, okay, this will also be color, but it'll be color widescreen as opposed to color in the aspect ratio, which is what all the B cam footage is.
Was it exciting to do these things? Was it tough? Were you like, this is going against my instincts?
No, it wasn't. It was, you know, it was pretty easy, pretty smooth.
Cool. Great. Well, there's just sometimes where, you know, there's been a couple times that when I'm in the editing room and I'm like, what am I doing right now? Yeah. But then you know, show it to someone else. They're like, this is cool. Or they'll tell you if it doesn't work, right? But it's like usually taking chances like that, you usually aren't like, why did I do that? You're usually like, oh, I didn't know I could do this, but I finally let myself do it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this was
that's great.
It was the first film I made without a shot list.
Whoa.
Yeah, because in the past, every film I shot listed, very, very detailed shot list, because I always thought, you know, all of these films had tight shooting schedules. And I always thought, if we fall behind, it'll be because we don't have a plan. You know, so I was always vigilant about creating a shot list and then having an AD who had memorized it and who had put it in the order in which we were going to shoot it. And then with Hekla, and I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that I mostly self-financed Hekla. So because it was my money, I think I was more willing to take risks, you know. And so, but we've visited all of those locations so many times. We originally visited all those locations in 2023, and when we were going to have another cinematographer shoot it. And then by the time we shot it in 2025, we had been back to all of them with the new cinematographer. We'd been there with the production designer. I had taken Liz there. And like every time we visited the locations, we kind of talked about how we were going to shoot each scene. So even though we didn't have a shot list, like we knew what we were going to do. And every scene had kind of its own visual style. You know, that was the other thing was like, okay, if we're going to see her audition 4 times, it needs to look different. Like, I don't want to use the same strategy. And I think it's even written into the script, because I will write camera movements and camera positions into the script. It was written into the script that in the first audition, the camera was going to push in on her when she does the scene for the second time. Like, you know, she's kind of getting into the zone. And unlike the first time she does it where you see cutaways to all the people looking at her, the second time it just pushes in on her. And then I thought, okay, I can never do that again. Like, I have to shoot every scene in a different way. So then... Right,
the second audition is in that, like harsh lighting, like those stagnant, like, shots. And the third one's the POV of the what was it? It's not a douche ad, but it is a douche. It is a douche ad. Okay.
And that's being shot with a cell phone, and the whole thing is from that angle.
And then again, the part of the reason why the final one feels so free is because it's just that loose, like, camera that's just like moving with her, like kind of in love with her. Like it's great.
And that also was kind of dictated by the space. I mean, I always say the location tells you how to shoot. You know, and that stage that she's on for the final audition, it has a round lip. So I said, Jose, our DP, Jose, why don't you like walk around her, and kind of, you know, like you're dancing with her almost, but walk around her and use the circular lip of the stage. And so that's what he did. And then the other thing about wanting every scene to feel different is then how we used the fantasy scenes was different every time as well. Because I literally didn't know what they were shooting. You know, I mean, Liz and Heather, the PD, were just cooking up these crazy ideas with the giant heart costume and, you know, all that stuff. The douche commercial with the rifle. Like, I had no clue. What they were doing. But, and I thought to myself, well, if I don't like it, I can just not use it. You know, so that was sort of something that made me feel better. I thought I can use some of it or I can use none of it. And then honestly, Aaron, we ended up using all of it. Like, we used all of it because it was so good. Great. It was so good. But then, my editor, Eric, and we wanted to make those, fantasy sequences feel different every time. So the first time, it's like the fantasy scene of her pulling the daggers out of the heart. It comes exactly between the 2 takes of the scene. So it's like that's what's happening inside of her, and that's what motivates her to do it differently the second time. In the second audition, it's almost like subliminal flashes when she's telling the story about the blue eye. And then the third time, we see the entire douche commercial a second time after she does it. And I thought that was cool because it's almost like, wait, is this the commercial?
Right, yeah. That's what I thought. It's like, oh, we've jumped into the future.
Yeah, she got, you know, and that's valid, you know. And then the fourth time, to me, it's almost like she's in dialogue with herself. You know, it's not like the subliminal flashes the second time. It's like,
it's a dance. It's a conversation.
It's a conversation, with herself.
For all of your films about conversations between 2 people, your newest one culminates in a conversation with oneself.
Aaron, I'm putting that in the director's statement. Putting it in the press kit right now.
Hell yeah, that's what I do it for, man. Again, it really started with the short films, and now this new film. You've been getting really self-referential, right? Because Relatives playing on the laptop or the TV in Paper Planes.
Yeah.
And now in this, in the first audition is literally a scene from Mercury and Retrograde in a chapter of the film titled Mercury and Retrograde. What led to that decision?
Honestly, I wasn't even trying to be self-referential. In both cases, it was a practical decision.
Okay.
Because with Alyssa's script for Paper Planes, she describes the main character Rachel watching TV, but she doesn't describe what she's watching. And so then it became a question of like, what is she watching, and what can we show that we have permission to show? Mm-hmm. And then I thought, well, we can just show have her watching my last movie. And because Paper Planes is kind of a commentary on the romantic comedy genre anyway. So I thought, well, it would be funny if she was watching a kiss from Relative, and then she said, fuck that. So that was my one and only contribution to the script. I was like, Shayna, say fuck that and turn it off.
Well, maybe I chose the wrong term by saying self-referential. It's almost self-deprecating because you're framing your one movie as like a Hallmark movie, and then your other movie as like the worst audition of this woman. She's literally doing it with like an ex-fling. It's very interesting. When I saw that, I was like, I'm being rewarded for watching the entire Glover Smith filmography.
I'm glad you asked me about this, because my biggest fear is that people are going to watch Hekla and think that that's what happened when we were auditioning for Mercury and Retrograde, but it wasn't. I mean, we didn't have actors improvise at all. I think there's something maybe a little dubious about that director in Hekla, for asking them to touch each other and to kind of go there. But anyway, the reason why I put that in Hekla was because, again, I was thinking, what can we have her audition for? And it was just easy to reuse a scene I had written for an earlier film. I was like, oh, she can audition for an indie film. So either I write a new scene from scratch, or I just use something that I already have. And that was the motivation for it. And then the experimental play, I just thought, I mean, that's kind of that's sort of loosely based on some real people, but I just thought it would be funny if there was a weird director who's like, I have no script, I just want to interview you and ask you questions. And then the douche commercial was kind of based on an actual friend of mine auditioned for a mac and cheese commercial, and she had to say something like, it was for radio, and she had to say something like, this cheese sauce is driving me wild. And she just said to me, God, this is like the stupidest thing I've ever had to say. And I have to pretend that I'm enthusiastic about it. So then I thought, oh, what is the dumbest thing I can write, that's just ridiculous? And then you turn around and then you do Oscar Wilde, so it's like it's kind of like tonal whiplash, And then also, just knowing Liz and knowing how diverse she can be as an actress, I thought, man, this would be a great showcase for her talents, is if we can show her doing a British accent, show her doing Shakespeare, show her singing, show her dancing, show her, doing physical comedy, because she's a great physical comedian. She has a pratfall. It was all about just trying to create a one-woman show.
Yeah, well, it is one of those performances, not to evoke Swanberg for the second time, but like you watch an early Greta Gerwig film, like with whoever she was working with, and you're like, this actress is going places, right? And that's kind of how I felt watching. She stands out so much in Relative, and then she's got basically Liz's like Frances Ha, and it's very I would not be surprised if I see her in some popular streaming movie in a couple years or something like that,
or just good indie
or a good
micro budget indie film.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to talk a little bit about your book that came out last week. The Bob Dylan as Filmmaker, No Time to Think. It's your second book. And you got me to watch Eat the Document and Ronaldo and Clara, which
wow,
no small undertaking for anyone who doesn't know. The first one, it's doable. It's like 55 minutes. Ronaldo and Clara is 4 hours long.
yes.
And yeah, but it was an interesting watch. It reminded me of a lot of like early Cassavetes stuff, and the way you contextualize it was really, really insightful. But I'm just wondering, what made you want to write this book? What do you see? Were these films an influence on the way you make films?
Yeah, this is it's been a very busy year. Because I was doing both of these things at the same time. I mean, I was writing the book and I was rewriting Hekla, and I was in pre-pro on Hekla, and I was also doing research and writing the book. And they did kind of feed each other in a way, because when I was writing a director's statement about Hekla for like the purpose of putting it in a press kit, and I actually unconsciously stole something that I wrote about Ronaldo and Clara. Like, I literally didn't even think about the fact that I was writing the same thing, but I basically said Hekla is about, a day in the life of an artist, and it's about a woman who is having a hard time balancing her personal life with her professional life. Mm-hmm. And I also had written in the Ronaldo and Clara chapter that was the ultimate meaning of Ronaldo and Clara, was the difficulty that Bob Dylan has in balancing his personal life with his professional life, because he's on tour, but he's married, and and he cast his own wife in the film, and
right.
She's playing a character in some scenes named Clara, but other times she's clearly just Bob Dylan's wife. And same thing with him. He's himself in some scenes and he's singing Bob Dylan songs, but then elsewhere people are calling him Ronaldo. And so, I realized there is kind of a thematic, connection there. And I think I'm really just interested in the lives of artists. Because I think there are a lot of things that are universal, that people who are, involved in the arts experience. And it's hard to have a relationship with someone who's not in the arts, and so, that's the big overlap.
That's what Hekla is about.
That's what Hekla's about, exactly. But I wasn't consciously thinking of it. It was like it.
Right.
But it kind of had to be that way.
I want to end off on a kind of a cheesy question, but I'm more so asking selfishly for myself, right? Because I'm the age that you were when you made the Minx, right? And I'm curious, now you've got all this experience. You've been making films you stand by for 11 years. But you've been, working in film for, it must be like 30 or 35 years or something like that, right? So everything now, like I personally think Hekla's your most accomplished work. You seem to think that you uncovered a lot of new things with that work. So like all the things you've been through now, like what would you say to the Minx age self? A piece of advice or a way to make films differently. What would you say to that 29-year-old Michael Glover Smith?
I would say just keep going, because I read recently that 84% of directors who make a feature film never make a second one. And that's a really depressing statistic.
That sucks.
I mean, it's horrible. You brought up Swanberg earlier, and he's the best example of someone he was the guy who proved that, you can just keep doing this, even though you're not making money, even though, because he was not making money for a long time, but he just kept doing it. And I think it's easier to do that now in the digital age, because you can keep the cost low. But I think it's sad. It fills me with sadness. Yeah, all the people I went to homeschool with, none of them are doing it anymore. And I think that's because they all had this idea that they were going to become massively successful and that was going to be their job. And then it didn't work out, and so what I want to know is, out of the 16% who make a second feature, how many then do a third? Like that percentage is going to get even smaller. So, and I get it, because after I made Mercury and Retrograde, I seriously contemplated just giving it up, because the budget for that was so high, and I put pressure on myself to try and be successful. And then, and when I didn't get into the festivals I thought I was going to get into, when I didn't get the distribution I thought I deserved, I was kind of crushed. But then I thought, I'm the only one who's making me feel that way. It's nobody else. Like, I put the pressure on myself. And I said, the next time I do this, I just need to have fun. Like, I'm going to do something quick, cheap. We're going to knock it out. We're going to shoot this in 8 days. We're going to go back to crowdfunding. And so, when Rendezvous in Chicago came out, I know some people who loved Mercury were disappointed because they thought, oh, this is so slight in comparison to Mercury, which is like a heavy film. I was swinging for the fences in terms of what we were trying to accomplish, both dramatically and aesthetically. Yeah. And then I thought, man, I'm just going to make a breezy little. I'm going to make 3 short films and we're going to stitch them together, and the process of doing that just really kind of recharged my batteries. So that's my long-winded answer. Is I would be like, keep going, stick with it.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, Michael. Can't wait for the world to see Hekla. I'd like to thank filmmaker Michael Glover Smith for taking the time to talk today. You can buy his book, Bob Dylan as Filmmaker, No Time to Think, on his website, michaelgloversmith.com. Make sure to buy it from Bookshop as opposed to Amazon. And you can check out his film Hekla on March 28th at the Beloit International Film Festival. If you aren't in the area, make sure to check his website for future screening dates. I'd like to thank Brett and Craig Wright and everyone here at Splittooth. Thank you to Will Denola for our theme music, and thanks to you for listening. Until we talk again, go make more movies. See ya.